has been called and she has not responded, and it's likely that she will not respond. So I guess I'd like to talk with the lawyers about what they want to do about that. Can we just skip her? Counsel? What's your feeling about that? Juror number 16 has been called, and she hasn't responded. And she's probably unlikely to. If we could just skip over her and go to the next one, that would be my suggestion. Is there any objection to that?
Your Honor?
Yes?
As far as we're concerned, we could just excuse her because her son had some serious criminal trouble. She probably don't want to discuss it.
Okay. All right, so everybody's in agreement. Carly, this is on the record. Everybody's in agreement that Juror 16, who has not responded to phone calls, we can just skip her. Yeah, we'll just release her for cause. Yes.
16?
Okay, are the lawyers ready for juror number 8?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Hello, juror number 8. Please have a seat. And would you please remove your mask? Thank you. First of all, thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I just have a couple of follow-up questions, and the lawyers may have some too, okay? You indicated in your answer to the questionnaire that you had a somewhat negative general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter. I guess my question is whether or not you could set aside whatever impressions that you would have had with respect to Officer Potter or Daunte Wright and concentrate on what the evidence in the case is and decide the case solely on the evidence.
Well, I don't know about. I would like to hear that question because it just doesn't sound like I would agree to something like that without having more information. So I don't know what I was thinking. Some of the questions were a little, kind of on the road. You don't know which way to go almost.
Yeah.
Some of them, but, But I don't know if you want to read that question to me. Maybe I could give you more insight.
The question was, from what you have seen, read, or heard, do you have a general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter? And there are little boxes to check, and you checked somewhat negative. Your response was because it's something no one wants to see happen.
It was probably it was a personal, I was reading them quick, personal thing. There's, when people work jobs and live their lives and everything like that, I mean, there might be nothing negative about it, I don't know, but it's a negative situation. So I was kind of taking the context of the situation. So it's, even if, it's somewhat, for some reason, it just made me want to put somewhat negative on there. It wasn't nothing to personally hurt or anything. It's more of the situation or something. I think I was looking at it in that context.
Okay, I understand.
I'm thinking.
But you could be fair and impartial to both sides here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like, you use empathy and there's, we do, we value the police department, we value being a citizen, and when you're in a line of work, you are held to a higher standard, to a certain degree. It doesn't, it doesn't mean that you're, I don't know, it's just people in authority are held to a higher standard somewhat. That doesn't mean that I have an opinion either way, but, citizens have things that they do, and they're, so I mean, it's one of those bad situations.
Okay. During the course of this trial, you'll probably hear some evidence concerning what a reasonable police officer would do under the circumstances. Would you be able to base your decision on whether or not the state has proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt on that testimony as opposed to any other personal opinion concerning what that duty is?
I think, if I knew more about the law and knew more about the information, and I would be as reasonable as I would I would want to make the most reasonable decision I could.
Okay, so in other words, you're going to keep an open mind.
Oh, definitely keep an open mind.
Okay.
I have no opinion either way. I mean, I didn't even really pay attention. I was up building my cabin, and I got that thing in the mail, and it's like, I hurried up and filled it out and sent it in, and I got rid of my cable TV like 3 years ago. So, I mean, I listen to music, and I do my thing at home, and I go up to my cabin, and I really haven't been paying a lot of attention to stuff as much as I should.
Okay, without a TV, I can see that
But I'm trying to be, I live my life as an open-minded person. I was raised in the cities, and I've always valued everything, being around people, and I value everybody. So.
Okay. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty with my computer. Do you want to be on this jury?
Oh, I'm a retired person. It fascinates me. I feel I can be very honest and impartial and listen to both sides. I feel I'm very capable of doing a good job, and I feel both sides would be very happy to have me on there, because once all the information gets out, because one side don't have all their information and they don't have all their information, and once everybody gets their information, who knows, they may all feel the same way. I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea. Right?
Right.
You know? But that's an unrealistic world, right? So, yeah.
All right. I liked your answer. Do you want to serve as a juror in this case? Yes. Why do you feel that way about serving as a juror? Because I am an open-minded and fair person.
Correct.
And that's what we are looking for. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have. But the attorneys may have some questions for you.
Good afternoon. Number 8. You're retired from your employment,
Yes.
and you just totally retired, or do you have another employment?
No, I don't have any unemployment.
Okay.
No, I'm retired full time. Yep, correct.
And can you think of anything that should be added to this questionnaire since the time that you filled it out a couple months ago? Any other news that we should know about you that isn't in this questionnaire?
Let me see. I don't think so. I haven't had a lot going on, so I don't know if I could add anything to it. You know.
Okay. Is there anything that the lawyers in this case should know about you in determining whether or not you'd be a proper fit for this case? Besides what's in the questionnaire, which is very thorough, I think.
Well, I don't know. I've always been an open-minded person, and I've had all types of friends and all types of backgrounds, and I just, I just pretty open-minded, and I'm not afraid to if something leads you to something, I'm not afraid to go down that road. I'm pretty open. I mean, I don't feel.
You understand that because the state has the burden of proof to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense does not get to go forward until after they rest. Would
Right.
you be able to keep an open mind until you hear all of the evidence, not only from the state, but from our client, Ms. Potter, and her witnesses? Would you be able to do that?
Yes, I think our society is getting better at keeping an open mind, because a lot of, just in general, I think, I really think I can keep an open mind, because I know everything, all the stuff against the defense is said first. And you're right, it'd be, they start painting a picture for the jurors' minds and stuff, and I think I can overlook that, because I'm a pretty open-minded person, and I have enough life experiences. I can figure it out.
I see also that you were sort of the boss when you weren't retired of what you were doing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when the case is completed, the jurors are going to go out and make a decision, and it has to be unanimous. You understand that, right?
Right.
Would you have a tendency to try and take over those 12 jurors that are trying to decide this case because at one time you were the boss?
No.
Or are you retired long enough to get out of that phase?
That's one thing I wouldn't do, because when I was the whole time I was the boss, I always valued my subordinates underneath me, and when if they had a good idea and wanted to do it their way, as long as the job got done, I went along with it. I don't micromanage people. I never did, and so a lot of people that work underneath you are just as bright and just as smart as you are. It's just that you happen to be in that position because you applied yourself at a moment and you got it. So I wouldn't hold that against. No, I wouldn't put myself above anybody else.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Pass for cause. Counsel? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Juror 8. I apologize, it's rather impersonal calling you by number rather than name, just the way we're doing it in this case, so forgive me for doing that. I have a couple questions to follow up with you about, and appreciate you being here and taking the time to do this. So you were a captain with the fire department.
Correct.
How long did you work in the fire department?
31 years.
And did you have a career before that, or has this been your...
Not much. I was a bartender. You know, that was it. When I was 19, I got married. I was a bartender, and then lived in Minneapolis, and a neighbor recruited me. I got the job, and I was on it for my career.
And worked your way up to captain?
Yeah.
One of the things we've learned is that a fairly substantial percentage of fire calls are actually medical calls, right?
Correct.
And a substantial portion of fire calls, when you go to the scene, there's Minneapolis police already there.
Correct.
Or come to the scene. So I assume over your career, you have worked fairly closely with Minneapolis police officers.
In some situations, we always waited until they cleared the scene before we would go on the scene and stuff like that. Yeah.
And in fact, that sort of protocol when going to a typical scene is the police officers are going to make sure it's safe for you to be there.
Correct.
So you stage somewhere else, I think is the term, right?
Yep.
And so in those circumstances, you rely on them to make it safe for you and the people you work with.
Correct.
And sometimes they're already doing life-saving measures by the time you get there and help out with that.
It happens. We're just as accessible as they are, so we usually, a lot of times we get there before the police most of the time. You know?
Okay.
So.
So obviously, over the course of a career, you've had a lot of good experiences with Minneapolis police officers.
Yep. Yep. Everybody kind of does their own job, and I've never had any real personal, like anything off the job or anything, but we always got along with people. You know, I mean, we get along with everybody. You know, we get along great with the community, with the police. Fire has always been the nice guy, and it's easy to be a fireman because everybody likes you.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of, it's a good job being a fireman. So I was glad I picked that career.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, congratulations. It was a good career. You know, when you see those videos of, a fire at night when it's 2 below zero and you guys are out there, you get some appreciation for what a terrible job it can be sometimes, right? Or a difficult job. Do you have any friends that are police officers?
My nephew is a police officer, and he works in St. Cloud.
Okay.
I don't see him that often, but he's a police officer.
You ever talk to him about his job?
Here and there a little bit. Not a lot over the years because we never lived close to each other, but on holiday, once in a while in a family function or something, but not too much, you know what I mean?
Yeah. In this case, obviously involves a police officer and other officers at the scene. You've had a lot of working relationships with police officers, a family relationship. Think you'd be more likely to believe an officer when they take the stand and testify because of your history working with them?
You know what? I like to think I would treat everybody the same. I would try to look at the situation and look at all the information and treat everybody the same. Obviously the defense, you got to give them just like the judge said, got to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's where we start off until it's proven otherwise, But I mean, I don't think I would be biased at all. I mean, towards any of the to our decision that we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, obviously there'll be some police officers that testify. Do you think you would, evaluate their testimony differently because of all the years of working with them?
no, and that's the reason of working, of being around people and seeing them interact and stuff. I don't feel like I would feel any different towards them as somebody else. I would just look at the information straight, because I don't feel that they're above me or below me or anything. They're people, and everybody's a person. Everybody's, and you just listen to the information and you try to make the right decision as a group, right? That's what I'm trying to do here, I guess.
Yeah. You think you can set aside the relationships you've had with police officers professionally, or and just evaluate the testimony of a police officer like anybody else?
I feel I can, because I've never had an opinion either way, I guess, with strong feelings, I guess, with just in general with police officers or firefighters. We're all human. I mean, I feel like I can make the correct decision. I just always have as a fire captain. I always, you try to collect information and be reasonable and be fair to everybody, and there's two sides here, and that's what that's what's going on here. I understand that.
This is a tough question, and I suspect you probably haven't been asked questions like these, right? These are not the questions you get at family functions. So there are no right or wrong answers here, right?
Okay. No, I'm just trying to ramble on and be the honest as I can here. Is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. Because the tougher question is, when you're a juror and then you sit over there and you listen to everything, and then you go into a room, and that's the place, in there where you got to set aside, these relationships you've had in the past, and you've told us, I think, candidly that you would like to think you could do that, or you feel you would do that.
Yep.
Tell us, can you assure us that you'd be able to set that aside, go in with that sort of...
I object to this improper way here. He's asked the question numerous times.
Counsel, you can move on to a different topic.
I think, as I was trying to indicate to the juror, he said he feels like he could. We have to, I think we're allowed to pry into that a little bit. I don't disbelieve you, sir.
No. Well, let me see. I'll give you an example. I got to look at life experiences, how I've acted conducted myself in the past and everything. Mm-hmm. And I've had friends that I really liked a lot and everything. And there was incidences that happened with people I didn't even know. And I would support the person I didn't know. So I don't always jump on just because that person is somebody I know or something, support them 100%. I would, I try to even be fair to people I don't know, even around my friends, I've actually lost a friend or two over the years because I didn't like the way they acted, and I've actually respected the person I didn't know more. So I think that character right there kind of shows me that I can stick to that. I can stick to that, and I feel strongly I can, But it's like I can promise you anything and this and that, but I'm just, I'm trying to be as honest as I can here,
Yeah, and like I said, I don't mean to belabor the points.
No.
Apparently that's what
Not
I'm
at all.
doing, but it's a very important point, obviously, right?
Oh, definitely. Yep.
Not every person is the right juror for the right case, so that's why we ask a lot of these questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you retired, well, let me ask it this way. When you were asked about the demonstrations that have taken place in the Twin Cities area, you indicated community is always affected by these types of demonstrations. What did you mean by that?
positive and negative both. It should, there's, like you say, there's people demonstrate, there's two sides to everything. I mean, it affects the community, it affects them in positive ways, negative ways. If something doesn't turn out, something bad happens or something, obviously. But that's the kind I was looking at. There's.
What are the positive ways that you can think of that?
It makes society step back and whatever they're demonstrating, take a hard look at it. Is it something that needs to be improved? Is it something that society can do, whatever the demonstration's about? I mean, somebody's bringing this demonstration up because they feel that there's a problem there, so they're trying to bring it up so everybody, I guess the political people deal with it. So that would be a good thing for a demonstration. Maybe things will improve, whatever the improvements is supposed to be. I don't know,
Yeah.
It's a general way of looking at it, I guess.
And some of the negative things? You think?
Negative things would be, obviously, with the different protests and stuff, a few things happened that probably would have been nice if it didn't happen, you know what I mean? Some of the excess of protesting. I'm trying to be thoughtful here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously there was destruction of property. That's always a bad thing. Sometimes, that's not good. So,
Did you? I started this line of questioning intending to ask about your job. If you were still on the job as a fire captain when a lot of that stuff was happening.
No. I retired 6 years ago, okay. So it was.
Whether you call them demonstrations, protests, riots,
whatever.
Yeah. Do you think that was handled by the various government agencies properly?
I think it just took everybody off guard, and people weren't prepared, and things happen. You know what I mean? Stuff happens, and I'm sure there's enough pointing to go around to everybody. I have I guess
No strong opinions either way about it, really, or?
No, because I wasn't living in the city then, and it's like, I guess I was in my own little world, retirement world, So, how that goes,
31 years, you're entitled to go to retirement, right?
Yeah, it's, yeah. So.
There was this chart of questions with agree or not agree. Do you remember doing that?
On the questionnaire?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure I filled it out.
Yeah.
What was on there?
Yeah, this was a long time ago. I don't expect you to have perfect recall.
I remember stuff pretty good.
Okay. One of the things that you were asked about is because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions that they make while on duty. And you circled somewhat disagree. You want me to
say that again?
Yeah, I thought you probably want me to.
Okay.
So you put somewhat disagree that because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions that they make.
I don't know if I was looking if on the fire department. See, if we're out in the field and something's going on, generally in the fire department, it's command is in charge, like the captain. If there's firefighters, if something's going on in that scene, usually the firefighters can object to it, but usually it's after the scene you have a fireside chat and you sit around, and then they can bring up all their questions they had that could have made it better or whatever. Was I thinking about when they're actually doing the job at the time? What was it?
Yeah, it's a tough worded question.
I don't know what I was thinking of that. I know that when you're out in the field, generally with any military organization, fire, police and stuff, they kind of give a lot of leeway to the person in charge. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're guiding, and then you don't, when there's something going down at the time, they usually don't, try to force their senior officer to do something else. You know what I mean? They're after the fact you bring it up.
And the way this one is worded, and
So-
it talks about not second guessing, and you said you somewhat disagree with that. So
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right. Not second guessing. Oh, yeah, it's, I mean, people can, not everybody looks at some situation and, you may second guess what they're doing. It's possible. Yeah, I've second guessed what chiefs did all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes there was nothing I could do but do what they wanted anyways because they were in charge. But you second guess people a lot, and sometimes you can bring it up, but it doesn't do you any good. And then sometimes there's people that listen to your subordinates because they are very knowledgeable and stuff, and then you change your mind. So I guess
yeah, and maybe even the term second guessing there, that's kind of hard to apply as well.
yeah, I'm not really.
Let me ask you the question this way. Like firefighters, police officers have dangerous jobs, right? You agree with that?
Yep, they can. Yep, sure.
But does that excuse us from looking back and evaluating what an officer or a firefighter did when they were on the job?
No, we're always training, reevaluating ourselves, readjusting ourselves. We make mistakes all the time. It's just the way it is. It's, some of it's not as bad as others. Some it's worse. It's like you say, and things are the way they are. You know what I mean?
As the captain, I assume you make some decisions that others have to follow.
That's correct.
And equally apply to your own decisions that maybe have to be reviewed later. Evaluate?
I change my mind all the time with my decisions. I always value the people underneath me. I was never one of those captains that you don't do it that way. I was always willing to, because as long as the job got done and everybody did a good job and they stayed professional and stuff, I was okay with them doing it their way. So I'm pretty open-minded about stuff like that, I guess.
Okay. One of the other questions was, people today do not give our law enforcement officers the respect they deserve. And you answered, somewhat agree. Do you recall that?
I would somewhat agree on that.
Okay.
Somewhat agree on that.
Tell me why.
I mean, you can. Yeah, I think I somewhat agree on that. You know what I mean? Just the way it is.
Why?
It's society. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's not any particular group, any particular anything. It's just, I guess we're just, I don't know, we're a little more relaxed, our society than it used to be. You know what I mean? We're not so, there's more knowledge and more information, everything else out there. So that plays a part in it too, I think. And it's.
Yeah. Also, what do you mean by we're a little more relaxed now?
Well, as far as, years ago, you worked the same job for 30 years all the time like I did. And, years ago, you did this, you did that. You never went outside the box. It was more, our society was a lot more structured. Now we just have a lot more things going on, a lot more information, a lot more this and that. And I think our society was driven certain directions years ago, like with the military or whatever it was. And things kind of changed a little bit over the years. I'm not saying it's always bad or always good or what, but it has.
So, going back to this question, you think that maybe police officers aren't getting the respect they deserve like they used to?
I would say if I had to give you a percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but I bet it's probably, it might be 1% less respect than they got 20 years ago. I don't know. I'm just saying. I just reached at something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't really have a lot of information behind it when I answered that question. I just think, as a general rule, I think that probably 51% of the population probably thinks they don't get enough respect if they do. That's all I see.
That's why you put somewhat agree.
That's why I put somewhat agree. It's probably just a little bit that way, but I don't feel strongly about it one way or another.
Yeah.
So.
You were asked a question about Black Lives Matter. Do you remember that question?
Yeah, I really don't know a lot about the group. I really haven't been paying attention to stuff like I should, you know what I mean? I probably should pay attention to things more. So I really don't know what I put on there, but I probably put down there. I don't know if I have a slightly positive or negative, or I probably put neutral on it because I don't know nothing about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
You actually checked somewhat unfavorable.
Did I write that down?
Yeah, and you indicated that it seems the group could work harder to stop inner-city gun crimes. Do you think we have a problem now with inner-city gun crimes?
Well, I think so. There is. You know what I mean? So.
And you think that group could do more to...
They could probably work harder on that area, yes.
Do you think that group is associated with some of the demonstrations or protests or riots that led to some of that property damage we talked about earlier?
I don't think it was any particular group. I think it was the moments of what went down and what happened, and everybody wanted to come out and vent and say how they felt about something and come together as a community or a society or whatever and make change. And I don't think it was any particular group or anything. I don't want to point fingers at any groups because, it looks like most people would have an input in it, you know what I mean? So.
Mr. Gray talked about his client and trying to make sure they get a fair trial for Ms. Potter. You recall that? You understand that the state is a party to this case as well, right?
Right.
The state has the right to a fair trial as well.
Yep.
Is that something you would think is important?
Oh, definitely it's important.
As a juror, of course, you're a neutral party, right? You're in the middle.
Yes.
Do you think you can provide a fair and impartial trial as a juror to both sides?
I definitely feel like, and I definitely want it to be. I want it to be fair. You know what I mean? I do. I'll definitely do my best on that. You know.
Do you have any concerns that if you're a juror in this case, how a verdict might be received by the former people that you worked with in the police department or the fire department?
Not at all. No, not at all. I really feel in this, I think whatever the jury decides, I think it's going to be fair. That's why I look at it. It's going to be fair and fair and just. That's what we want. So I'm going with the system. That's what it's going to be, and that's what I feel. And it's. So I don't feel. I think that's what people want. I don't care who you are. If you're a citizen or a firefighter or who you are, that's what you want.
Can I have a moment, please? Excuse me. Okay, thank you, Juror Reid. I have no further questions. We'll pass the jury.
Okay. Juror number 8, you will be on this jury. Okay, I'm sorry. You're dismissed from this panel.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the fact that you came in and everything else. It was wonderful meeting you, and you are done with jury service, okay?
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, for the record, the state exercised a peremptory strike on juror number 8. Okay. Okay, juror number 9, welcome. Please have a seat. And would you please remove your mask? Okay. All right, thank you for filling out the questionnaire. I know it was a little long. I don't really have that many questions, follow-up questions for you. Okay. You indicated in response to question number 2 that that question is, from what you've heard, seen, read, do you have a general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter? And you checked the answer somewhat negative and stated she was an officer for a very long time and she made a grave mistake. I guess my question to you is this. We want jurors to decide the case, the question of whether or not the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, based solely on the evidence in the case and my instructions of law, and not on general impressions that you may have. Would you be able to set aside any general impressions that you may have and keep an open mind and listen to the evidence and decide the case based on only that evidence?
I believe I would be open to listening to all evidence presented in the courtroom. I have heard a small amount. I don't often watch the news, so I've seen very small or little coverage of the story. But I do believe I would not be biased towards the case in a sense. You'd like me to elaborate further?
Do you want to elaborate further? You can if you like.
No, I don't have much more to say on the matter.
Okay. You stated that your friend's shop was broken into during one of the demonstrations, and he had inventory stolen. I guess my question to you is this. You talked to your friend, and he or she was upset about that. Correct?
Yes, very much so. A friend of mine, I've known him for about a decade, since 2011. He, after the civil rights protests in the city of Minneapolis, his shop was raided. He then spent a year rebuilding his inventory and redesigning the shop. And then after this incident, the protests again, he was targeted at his shop. And it was a point of frustration after he had built back the back up his shop and inventories and whatnot. So he was directly related to this, so
Okay. And
affected by it.
all right. And I take it you felt bad for him because he was a friend, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Again, I'm going to ask you this. Can you decide this case based upon the evidence and not have any sympathy or whatever concern for your friend without regard to that?
If I'm being 100% honest, I don't think it's my relationship with my friend and what happened to him that would decide my viewpoint on the case. I think it would be more of just my opinion on what had happened. I don't think that I would be so persuaded to not want to hear the evidence because I don't know a lot about the case.
Okay.
So I don't think my relationship to my friend would persuade me in one direction or the next. So,
in other words, what happened to your friend is not going to make you tend to vote not guilty or guilty.
no,
Is that accurate?
and alone would not. No.
Okay. Thank you. You indicated that police officers are more likely to respond with force when confronting a black suspect than when dealing with the white suspect. And you circled strongly agree. Could you elaborate on your answer?
I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to make observations. I have had people of color, friends of mine, directly face law enforcement in a way that I have not, just from my own personal life experiences. I feel that one has to question, is there racial bias? I think that's something that all of us question to an extent. So I just think the tone set for a traffic arrest varies based on your race. I think that's reality that we face. So I don't specifically remember answering that question, but if you're asking me right here, I think it does make a difference. So yeah.
Okay, you've observed situations where that was true, but can you keep an open mind and listen to the evidence in this case before coming to a conclusion on whether or not that happened here or not?
Although I do believe that is reality that a lot of officers face, or current political climate or in our country, but I would want to hear any and all evidence before making a judgment. I wouldn't have my mind set 100% prior to the case. I do believe that everyone should have equal and fair opportunity. I know nothing about the defendant. I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her family. None of that. So I would like to hear evidence presented before I would just make up my decision, yes.
Okay. Finally, in response to the question, do you want to serve as a juror in this case, you checked not sure. Do you still feel that way?
I just wanted to come and be honest with my answering and questioning, and then just let the cookies crumble as they may. I'm not leaning towards yes or no.
I take it you've never served on a jury
Never,
before?
no.
Okay.
No.
All right. And what was your reaction when you got your jury summonses?
It was very surprising. You don't think it will happen to you until it does. It was actually sent to a former address where I had lived. So my friend that his shop got broken into was actually his home that he owns, and I was renting from him. So I had moved and updated my address, and about a month later he told me that I had received this packet, didn't know what it was, opened it, first time I had been summoned for a jury. So it was surprising, to say the least. Especially a case of this nature was surprising. I have had the ability or opportunity to live abroad throughout my life, and I do have many foreign friends who are aware of this case that have brought it up to me without me mentioning it. So it's a lot of, it was surprising, to say the least.
Do you still live in Hennepin County?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you willing to serve?
If the prosecution and defense chooses me, I would. My work is small in nature. I don't have much backup to cover it, but if I'm selected for jury, I don't believe I would say no. So yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, that's all the questions I have.
Good afternoon.
My name is Paul Lang. I have some questions on behalf of Mrs. Potter, Officer Potter.
Okay.
You sound hesitant as we sit here about serving, and that's kind of just a intuitive feeling I have about it after listening to several other jurors too. And am I right in thinking that you're a little hesitant? Just curious.
I don't necessarily know how to answer that. I do know because of my personal work, I have clients to attend to, and I don't know how that would fill out or play out in my own personal life. As far as the case itself, I don't know if you'd want to select me.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. That's what I thought. And maybe you can tell me why.
Excuse me, Mr. Lee, I don't think your microphone is on.
It is on.
Oh, okay.
Well, why wouldn't I select you? Why wouldn't I want to select you?
Full disclosure, I have heard the age of the can I use the word victim or the
You can use Mr. Wright if you like.
Mr. Wright?
How's it? Mr. Wright would be fine.
And then I've also heard that Miss Potter has been an officer for quite some time. And me sitting here, I don't know what evidence I could hear that would change my mind per se. But then again, that's hard for me to say without hearing any evidence at all. I've heard very minor news on the case itself. So,
Well, it sounds like you kind of made up your mind a little bit. It's okay if you say that too. I mean, we all kind of have opinions about things. I mean, if you've already kind of made up your mind on certain things, it's all right. I mean, it's okay for you to say that. You have permission to say that if that's kind of what you're telling us.
that, I think you've identified it quite accurately. This is a new experience for me, but I do believe I do have some biases against your client, and that I guess I'm curious to hear evidence as to what would personally change my mind on the story and what happened, what transpired.
I mean, the sort of a cart before the horse problem that we have. The problem is that we have to have a clean slate going in.
Yeah, I understand.
Before we start, and then you hear things, and so the clean slate is that you don't have an opinion or don't have a bias, as you would say, and it's okay to have a bias again. So that's what we're trying to inquire here. I mean, I can get in all the details of your questionnaire. I have 10 questions for you, but I'd just like to cut to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you tell us whether, given what you know about the case, given her age, given the age of Mr. Wright, given what you've read, given your friends who've talked to you about the matter, you can be unbiased here. That's the question.
I guess the main concern for me would be, in all honesty, how, if you are a seasoned officer, it's almost like getting in a car crash. If you're about to get in a crash, you know the difference between the brake and the gas. And if you don't know the difference between a taser and a rifle, or not a rifle, but a pistol, I then question your judgment and your expertise. And to convince me differently, that would be the whole point of the defense. And
well, she has no obligation to convince you of anything, really. I mean,
absolutely.
She doesn't. At a trial, she would testify, but maybe you're not going to be at the trial. But I mean, she doesn't have to. We don't have to do anything. I mean, they have to prove this to you. She has no obligation to say anything.
I know.
Well, I mean, are you going to be are you biased to a point where you would not be fair here? That's the end question that the judge would ask you, or the state would ask you, and I've just asked you.
I think that if you can find other juror that would be 100% unbiased, I would not be your best selection. So I can say that, yes. Okay. But I don't think that many people out there wouldn't have any bias towards this case. I don't have much more to say about it.
May I pause, Your Honor?
Yes. Yes.
Juror 9, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm just going to interrupt just for a couple of questions I wanted to ask you to sort of follow up on what you've been answering, because we get your answers and we understand that you're being candid, and we really appreciate that. But the bottom line is, we all have biases, right? And I think you recognize you have some biases about the case because of what you know, right?
Yes.
And a lot of jurors are going to have information about the case. The question is, can you set that aside? And when you serve as a juror, you listen to that evidence you look forward to hearing and make a decision based on what happened here in the courtroom in a fair and impartial manner. That's the question, really. And you're the only one that can tell us this, right? So just a candid question about, I'll tell you why I asked, because in your jury questionnaire you were asked, can you set aside your bias, passion, prejudices, and decide this only on the evidence? And you wrote yes. No equivocation there. So, yes, you recognize you have these biases. And recognizing it is a big part of dealing with it, right? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do acknowledge the bias. I also believe in a fair trial, no matter what the case. So I do want to hear both sides, defense and prosecution. So I do believe that I would be able to not draw a conclusion 100% by just what I believe now. I do honestly believe to a fair trial and the defense's ability to put the case up there. And so yes, I acknowledge the bias, but I do not believe that I'm so hardcore set in stone in what I believe. I'm sure there's many other factors that will come into play in the actual trial. So
yeah,
yes.
In your questionnaire you were asked about these very important principles of law, the presumption of innocence. The burden of proof is ours, not the defendant's at all, right?
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
And the burden of proof being beyond a reasonable doubt. And you would have to apply that, and you said you would in your questionnaire. So the question today, and again, only you can answer this, is can you set aside that previous information, decide the case carefully based on the evidence you hear in the case in a fair and impartial manner?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And by believe so, because we're Midwesterners and we talk like that, but do you think you would do that?
Yes, I would do that. Yes.
That's all the voir dire I have at this point.
Thank you so much for your honesty, and thank you for coming here today. You're dismissed from this panel, all right? So you're done with jury duty. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Please be seated. All right, good afternoon, panel members. I'm Regina Chu, and I'll be the presiding judge in this trial. First of all, I want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for interrupting your normal routine. Thank you for fulfilling such an important civic obligation. These are, of course, not normal times. These are extremely trying times. So it is with extra heartfelt appreciation from the entire judicial system that we say thank you for responding to your jury summonses. Upholding the rights we cherish, the right to a trial by jury and the right to a speedy trial in unusual, trying times is the American way. You validate these constitutional rights by appearing today and by proving your willingness to serve. You jurors are our heroes. You are ordinary people who are called to do extraordinary work to make sure our justice system moves forward even in the midst of a pandemic. You are upholding the Constitution, the very foundation of our democracy, and we could not do this without you. Not all of us can serve in the military, but what we can do is do our civic duty by serving as jurors. Our justice system would not work without good citizens like you. I'm saying thank you again because I really can't say it enough. As you know, this is a criminal case, and in this case, the state of Minnesota has charged the defendant, Kimberly Potter, with the following charges. Count 1 is first-degree manslaughter predicated on reckless use or handling of a firearm. And that charge alleges that on or about April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright while committing the misdemeanor offense of reckless handling or use of a firearm so as to endanger the safety of another with such force and violence that death or great bodily harm to any person was reasonably foreseeable. Count 2 alleges second-degree manslaughter, and that count alleges that on or about April 11, 2021, in Brooklyn Center, Hennepin County, Minnesota, defendant Kimberly Ann Potter caused the death of Daunte Wright by her culpable negligence, whereby Kimberly Potter created an unreasonable risk and consciously took a chance of causing death or great bodily harm to Daunte Wright while using or possessing a firearm. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. This plea denies the charges and places upon the state of Minnesota the burden of proving defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The state is represented by A.G. Keith Ellison, Mr. Matt Frank, Ms. Erin Eldridge, and Mr. Josh Larson. The defendant is represented by Mr. Earl Gray and Mr. Paul Ing and Ms. Amanda Montgomery. And will the defendant please rise? Thank you. I have two clerks that will be helping me throughout this trial. You may have met them already. Mr. Zach Kramer and Ms. Jessica Bauer. They're responsible for all the administrative matters that need to be done during this trial. Now, if you want to send a message to me of a personal nature, please let my staff know, and they'll make sure I get the message. And then sitting in front of me is Carly Davis. She is a certified court reporter, and she's responsible for taking down all the testimony and keeping a formal record of the trial. That means when you respond to questions, you must speak loudly and clearly so our court reporter can make an accurate record of the proceedings. If your answer is yes or no, you must answer orally instead of shaking your head. And please refrain from saying uh-huh or uh-uh, because that doesn't come out on the record. All right, with respect to masks, please wear your mask while you're in the courtroom, and you're required to also wear your mask in all areas of the courthouse. The attorneys also are required to wear their masks. They are allowed to remove their masks when they're questioning from the podium. Okay? Now, we're about to start voir dire, which is jury selection. There's going to be two parts to the voir dire. I'm going to start out by asking you general questions as a group. You don't need to respond to the general questions orally. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hands. Then, what will happen after the general questions, I will do individual voir dire. I'll excuse all the panel members except one from this courtroom, and we'll question you individually, and you'll be questioned in the witness box behind the plexiglass. And I'll ask you to remove your mask when you're in the witness box. Okay. Please note that we can't usually control the courtroom temperature very well, so remember to dress in layers, okay? You are also allowed to bring a beverage into the courtroom as long as it has a cover on it. Now, there may be delays that occur during this trial. Of course, we'll take lunch. Will be breaks in the morning and the afternoon. There may be other breaks too, and I want to apologize in advance for any delays that might occur during this trial. I try to deal with all legal matters with the attorneys before you come to court or after you leave in the evening, but sometimes things come up that we didn't anticipate, and that's what I'm apologizing for if that should happen, so I hope you understand. At this point, I'm going to give you some preliminary instructions. There are rules of law that apply in a criminal case. I'm going to give you some of those rules now. In the questioning that will take place, you may be asked whether you will accept and follow the rules of law that I give you, and you should have these instructions in mind when you answer those questions. A complaint is not evidence. It creates no inference or presumption of guilt. No member of the jury should in any way be prejudiced against the defendant because a complaint has been filed against her or because the defendant is on trial. The defendant is presumed innocent. In order for you to find the defendant guilty, the state must prove guilt. The defendant does not have to prove innocence. The presumption of innocence remains with the defendant unless and until the defendant has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by evidence admitted in this trial. A common misperception of the American justice system is that the jury determines whether the accused person is guilty or innocent. That is not what American juries do in a criminal case. There is no such thing as an innocent verdict in American criminal law. The jury's verdict is either guilty or not guilty. Guilty means proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Not guilty means not proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, to make sure that both the defendant and the state receive a fair trial by an impartial jury, it's going to be necessary for me and the attorneys to ask you some questions. Remember that you will be under oath when you answer our questions and that you must answer truthfully. You know, this questioning is a very important part of the process. All of us hold personal beliefs and all of us have had things happen to us. Our goal in jury selection is to try to determine whether or not you hold some opinion so strongly, or if something has happened to you or someone near and dear to you that would interfere with your ability to be a fair and impartial juror in this type of a case. In other words, a personal opinion or a life experience that would essentially prevent you from listening to the evidence in the case and deciding this case solely on the evidence. Please don't take any offense to the questions you are asked. None of us wishes to pry into your personal lives. Our sole purpose and our obligation is to ensure that the jurors who decide this case are neutral, open-minded, and fair. Neutral means that before you hear all the evidence, you are not leaning one way or the other on the question of whether the state has proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Open-minded means that you're willing to listen and consider all the evidence. Fair means you will base your verdict on the evidence in this case and not on anything that is not presented in this case. We want you, of course, to bring your common sense into the jury room, but your verdict must be based on the evidence you hear during the trial. Your obligation is to answer the questions honestly and tell us of anything, even if you are not directly asked, that might affect your ability to be neutral, open-minded, and fair. Some of you that are called to be questioned will be excused from this case. Please don't take any offense to that. I hope you will understand. At this point, I will ask that all of you stand up and raise your right hand while my clerk swears you in under oath.
Do you affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror? If so, please say, I do.
Okay, please be seated. Thank you. All right, I'm going to start with the group questions now. And again, please don't respond out loud. Just raise your hand. Do any of you have any serious concerns about your health? If you were called to be a juror in this case, please raise your hand. Okay, no hands are raised. Second question. Our system of law presumes the defendant innocent of the charges against her unless and until she has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is on the state. The defendant does not have to prove her innocence, and she is presumed innocent. Do you accept the principle that the defendant is presumed innocent and that the state has the burden of proof? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Does anyone disagree with that principle? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. If you serve as a juror, I'll instruct you as to the law. You must follow the law as I give it to you, even if you believe the law is or should be different. Are you willing to do this? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Oh, okay, all hands are raised. If you're chosen as a juror, I'll instruct you that proof beyond a reasonable doubt is such proof as ordinarily prudent men and women would act upon in their most important affairs. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. A reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all possible. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all possibility of doubt. Does anyone disagree with that principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. No hands are raised. In arriving at your verdict, if you sit as a juror, the subject of penalty or punishment is not to be discussed or considered by you. This is a matter that lies solely with the court and within the limits prescribed by law. The subject of penalty or punishment must not in any way affect your decision as to whether or not the state has proven the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Are you willing to follow this instruction? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law that the judge instructs, and not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. Would you be able to follow this principle of law? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. There will be police officers who will testify in this case, as well as other witnesses. I'm going to give you some guidelines in determining whether a witness is believable or not believable, and it's basically a matter of common sense. But things to look at are, how did the witness appear? Did he or she seem honest and sincere? Will the witness gain or lose if the case is decided a certain way? Was the witness's testimony consistent with other evidence in the case? And what is the relationship of the witness to the parties? Would you be able to use these guidelines in deciding the credibility of a police officer just as you would any other witness? If so, please raise your hand. All hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would automatically believe the testimony of a police officer just because he or she is in law enforcement? Please raise your hand. No hands are raised. Is there anyone here who would totally discount the testimony of a police officer just because of his or her position? Please raise your hand. Okay, no hands are raised. Now, before you came in here, you were given a list of possible witnesses. They may not all testify, but my question to you is this. Please raise your hand if any of you know any of the witnesses on the list. And I'd like you to raise your hand even if you're not sure. Okay, no hands were raised. Do any of you have trouble hearing or understanding what I'm saying? If so, please raise your hand. No hands are raised. Okay, let me give you an idea of what the schedule is going to be. We will start with opening statements and the trial by December 8, and we expect to be finished before Christmas Eve. That is our best estimate. Now, don't be concerned if we don't finish by Christmas Eve. I intend to take Christmas Eve and that weekend off and start the following Monday on December 7 if we are not done. So you don't have to worry about missing Christmas with your family and friends. As far as day-to-day, the trial will be conducted from 9 o'clock to either 4:30 or 5 o'clock. There will be a 20-minute break in the morning, about approximately 10:30. and a 20-minute break in the afternoon, but we typically try to take a break by 3 o'clock or 3:15. And there will be a lunch break from 12:30 to 1:30. Okay, so that'll be our typical trial day. Now, please remember, while court is in recess, you must not talk to anyone involved in this case, nor should you discuss the case among yourselves. During the recess, you might see the attorneys or parties in the hallways. Don't take offense if they don't stop and say hello or talk to you. Everyone involved in this case has been ordered to have no contact or communication with any member of the jury panel. Any violation of that rule could jeopardize this trial, and this prohibition will continue until a verdict has been rendered. And of course, do not do any research about this case. Don't do anything as far as social media on this case. And I will remind you about that from time to time. Okay, at this point, members of the panel, I'm going to ask that everyone leave, follow the deputy out, except for juror number 10. Okay, juror number 10, will you please come up and take a seat right next to me in the witness box? And will you please remove your mask?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you doing today?
Doing fine.
Okay, thank you for being so patient.
Yes,
We were a
ma'am.
little bit behind. I just have a couple of follow-up questions on your questionnaire. You indicated that you have a very negative general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter. And your answer is, I feel this way because with as much experience on the force, she should know the difference between a taser and a gun. You also have a somewhat negative general impression of Daunte Wright. And you indicated, I feel this way, he should not have been shot, but his choices he made were incorrect. My question to you is this. Of course, you've heard things and you've formed some opinions about the parties in this case. And, that's perfectly okay. But if you're chosen as a juror in this case, you have to put that aside and decide this case based solely on the evidence that is presented in this case, and you must follow the law and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner. Would you be able to do that?
I would definitely be fair, but I just... I'm sorry. Yeah, I would definitely be fair about the case.
Okay.
I just think it's everybody got an opinion, and
Right.
what she did and he did, I don't say it was right for nobody, but it's what it is.
Right. So, even though you might have an opinion right now, you can set that aside, listen to the evidence, and decide the case solely on the evidence presented.
I would definitely do that, but I never talk about this type of stuff or politics and stuff, and I'm uncomfortable with being on a jury or stuff like that because it just ain't me.
I understand.
I don't think I've been through a lot this year. My wife 6 months ago had COVID on the ventilator. Now she just went through 6 months ago with double this sacrament with cancer. I just don't feel comfortable up here dealing with this.
Okay.
I got a lot of other things on my mind.
All
right now.
right. So, you've got a lot of things going on in your personal life,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me again what they are?
But, based out the last 6 months, I almost lost my wife twice. And I'm just, then I got selected to this, then I'm worried about this, I'm worried about her going through chemo and all that stuff, so.
Okay, so your wife has cancer.
She just had double disectomy, whatever
Okay.
you call it. And
All right.
she went through she was in a coma for a month and a half with this COVID stuff. All this happened within 6 months, so.
Okay.
I'm just going through a lot, but I'll be fine. If I get selected, I guess I'll have to understand and do what I got to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I hope
I
that
just-
she's doing better.
And then another thing, I work for the jail. I'm a food service supervisor at the kind of workhouse out in Plymouth, Park Lake there. I deal with a lot of inmates, and I live in Champlain, and I just don't, a lot of people know me, and I just won't feel comfortable being a juror.
Can you explain why you would feel uncomfortable being a juror?
Because the people that might sit there might know me. I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like I'm well known, not in a bad way, but a good way.
Okay. You're concerned that other jurors will know you, or who?
Just people just come in and sit in the jury.
Okay.
Like their family or her family. I don't know. Somebody might know me.
Okay. Well, do you know any of the Potter family?
I don't know nobody, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that what I heard on the news, she don't live that far from me.
Okay.
So
And do you know any of the Wright family?
I don't know nobody from, but I know Brooklyn Park ain't that far from where I live.
Okay.
So I don't know. Somebody might know me or recognize.
All right. You don't know any of the other
I don't know
jurors?
I don't know no jurors. I ain't never seen nobody.
Okay.
Nobody. I never know.
All right. But you feel uncomfortable because you feel that other people might recognize you?
But that's just not it. I just it's just hard for me to deal with some this extreme. I'm not used to this. It just be tough.
Yeah, you've never served on a jury.
I never
before.
served on a jury. I never had to be asked questions,
Okay.
stuff like that, and that just means like when people talk about politics, I get away from it. People talk
Yeah.
about black and white stuff, I get away from it because it don't concern me, and I just try not to get into that fighting bed with other people and stuff like that. I just never was like that.
I totally get that.
I just never was like that.
This part of the trial is uncomfortable for a lot of people because
Yeah.
you're not used to being questioned.
Yeah.
And I don't know any jurors that, find this to be a pleasant situation.
I understand what you're
And-
saying, but
And I hope you understand why we have to do it.
it's fine, but I do my best to do the best thing I can to make it fair for both parties. I will never judge nobody either way.
Okay.
I will, but I'm just not comfortable, but I.
Well, it's natural to not be comfortable. This is a totally different situation that you've never experienced.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Everybody feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I do. I just got so much. I guess I got so much going on. Almost about to lose my wife a couple of times this year.
Right.
And
Is
I
you-
just rather get my mind back on something
Okay.
else than this.
Now your wife is doing better.
Yeah, she got better. Now I was at the doctor with her all day over there. And I've been here earlier. She had to go in because he had the genetic testing and all that stuff. And they talking about chemo, taking this pill. It's a lot of stuff on my mind right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, number 10. Let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Given the health problems that your wife is undergoing and you're concerned about them
Yeah.
legitimately, are you going to be thinking about that the whole time if you're chosen as a juror? Or can you concentrate
It's hard
on
to
the
say.
evidence?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say because I don't know if we're going to come back or not,
Okay.
I don't know. I think I can get over, but I can't promise you that.
All right. I guess what I am trying to get at is, will your concerns about your wife's health prevent you from listening to the evidence in the case?
No, ma'am. I would definitely always listen because it's important for both parties, right? And what's her name?
Potter.
It's important for both of them, and I do understand that. I don't like to see nobody get killed or nobody go to jail for 15, 20 years. That's something I don't wish on nobody. Like, you know, I just want whatever happened. I want to come back and people do the right thing. You know, that's all. Just do the right thing and make, you know.
Right. Okay, thank you for that.
I just pray to God. Let God deal with it.
You know, I should tell you that I talk to jurors all the time after they come to a verdict, and every one of them, even though they didn't really want to serve, they were really glad they did. And they tell me that they learned a lot and that they stepped away from service as a juror with the renewed respect for our system of
respect
justice.
jury 100%. I just won't be.
I
I
understand.
respect that. That's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it takes you out of your normal routine. It's inconvenient. You have to come downtown. I don't think we pay you enough for parking. I don't, so.
Yeah, I'm the type of guy I hate going downtown.
Yeah.
I hate doing this. Like my wife dropped me off because I didn't want to drive in down park. I ain't been downtown in many years.
Yeah.
I moved away from Minneapolis in 2006. I ain't been down here unless I'm going to the doctor.
Okay.
So everything looked different to me. It changed. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be down here. Then you got these people riding and stuff. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I think a lot of people would feel the same way you do. You said that you would have difficulty looking at graphic photographs or video, including photos or video of a person who has died. Now, if you were chosen as a juror and you had to do that, would you do that?
I feel like I wouldn't have a choice, but I don't like doing that. I don't like looking at bullet holes, and
Yeah.
I stay away from that. I don't even like the.
I think most people wouldn't like it.
That's just me, you know.
Okay, but if you're chosen as a juror and it was your duty to look at those photographs and videos, would you do it?
Yes, ma'am. I respect the court to give them the honors and be truthful about everything.
Okay.
Yes, I will not sit up here and lie on the oath.
All right, and lastly, there was a question. Do you want to serve as a juror? And you said no. Why do you feel that way? And you indicated my feelings are for my safety. The way everything has gone down with George Floyd and this case, I worry for my safety. Can you?
Not only that.
Do you still feel that way?
People, you know, they want to ask, you know, everywhere you go, even when they're over with, they want to talk about it. And I'm not the type of guy to deal with that type stuff. So I'd rather just not have part of it because I don't want to be in the middle of that. I don't want to be in the middle. My life is, I just deal with God and just live a good life. I don't want to be dealing with negatives. I'm always about positive, and I don't want to deal with nothing negative.
Okay. I should tell you that you are not required, if you serve as a juror, you're not required to talk to anybody about this case.
And I respect that, and I won't because I know it can enter the case. So I have to do what I have to do, but I'd rather not even go through that.
Okay, I know.
Yes.
But if the parties believe that you would be a fair juror in this case and they picked you to serve, would you serve?
I guess I have to do it. I ain't going to jail. I will. Yes, I have to. I guess. I don't want to go to jail.
You wouldn't go to jail if you just if you were.
I just, it gets tough.
Yeah.
That'll be tough.
Okay, but would you do it if the parties picked you as a juror?
I ain't gonna sit up here and lie to you. I'd rather not, but I guess I will.
Okay. And I know you're reluctant, but you would do your civic duty, right?
I'll do my duty.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ng?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Paul Lang is my name. I'm one of the lawyers for Mrs. Potter,
Yes.
Officer Potter, with Earl Grey, Amanda Montgomery. On the one hand, you would serve. On the other hand, you have a lot going on in your life.
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that service here would be a hardship upon you because of your wife's medical condition?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it would be fair to say as well that you're worried about your personal safety if you were to be picked as a juror. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I just don't want nobody to find out I was on the jury and then they go either way and then it'd be a problem. I don't know.
Well,
I
right
hear things about juries, so I don't want to be.
Yeah, so right now we're anonymous, but when the trial ends, eventually the jurors' names get released, and then
Yes.
Are you worried that are you worried for your personal safety no matter what your decision is?
True.
Okay, so
Yes,
if you acquit, if you find that the evidence is insufficient and not proven for Officer Potter and you find her not guilty, you're worried about ramifications for that, I assume.
Yes.
At the workhouse where you work,
Yes.
in the population up in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park.
Yes, and I work around a lot of inmates. I got 17 inmates in my kitchen.
And your
They comes and
concerns,
goes.
and your concerns about your personal safety are on your mind right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would rather not be here.
Yes, sir.
And you can be excused if you say it's a hardship or you can't serve in a fair fashion. That's all you got to say.
I can't, probably.
Pardon me?
I probably can't.
You probably can't.
Yep.
I mean, all you got to say is you can't.
I can't.
Yeah, use the microphone.
Okay. Juror number 10, you are excused. Okay? So you're done with jury duty, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you very much for your honesty.
I'm sorry, but yes.
Totally understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
Y'all have a wonderful day. God bless everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
All right.
So what do I do now?
You're done.
Do I go back to the room?
No, you can go anywhere you want.
Well, do I turn this in?
Yes, the deputy will get that
okay.
from you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, for the record, the parties agreed that juror number 10 could be excused for cause because he has concerns for his own safety should he be on this jury, and his wife is very ill and has personal problems. Oh, yeah. It's all right, we're going to take a 20-minute break. Commission is really upset that his name, that people were able to identify him. So I just want to warn everybody again. We've got to not ask questions where they could be identified. So please. He was very concerned. Okay.
Yes, Judge.
I think number 14 has postponed as well, right? Is it 13? Okay, it's 13, not 14. Okay.
We have our next juror on the stand.
Oh, hello. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Would you please remove your mask? Okay. Thank you for being so patient. I know that you've been waiting a long time. I just have a couple of questions for you. On question number 10, I'm going to read the question and then what your answer was. No matter what you've heard or seen in this case, and no matter what opinions you might have formed, can you put all of that aside and decide this case only on the evidence you receive in court, follow the law, and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner? And your answer was, I am sure I will have to. Okay? Could you explain what you meant by that?
I think I'm just such a law follower that I just, would have to.
Okay, so you would follow the instructions of the court and say, no matter what opinions you might have had of the parties, and no matter what you've heard about this case, you can decide the case only on the evidence presented in court.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, Ryan, could you speak into the mic? We can't.
Sure. You want me to say it again?
Oh, yeah, he just wanted you to speak into the microphone.
I said I'm such a rule follower that I believe that I would have to.
And you would?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you stated that a friend or family friend was a victim of a fatal stabbing in Minneapolis, and it was a close friend. Were the police called in connection with that?
Yes,
And what was were you there at the time it happened?
I was not.
Okay. How long ago did it happen?
It's been at least 5 years now.
And did this friend recover from the stabbing?
No.
So he or she is in still very bad physical condition
No, she passed away.
from the stabbing?
Yeah.
Okay. And did the culprit who did this, was he or she ever found?
Yes.
And what happened to?
He was found guilty.
Okay. And he went to prison?
Yes.
Okay. What did you have any interactions with police in connection with that stabbing?
No.
Okay. Did she? Was it a she?
Yes.
Okay. Did she ever express any dissatisfaction with how the police handled it?
No.
Okay. Did you think that justice was done in that case?
Yes.
Is there anything about that case that makes you think, I really shouldn't sit on this jury at all because it involves someone who died?
I believe that I'll be, listen to the evidence in this case. Every case is different.
Okay. So you can be fair and impartial in this case, even though your friend was murdered, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Can you tell me you can?
I can.
Okay. Thank you. One of the questions on the questionnaire was, under our system of justice, a defendant is presumed innocent of the criminal charges against them. Would you be able to follow this principle of law? And you said, if it is required of me. You meant yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you answered the same way about the prosecution having the burden of proving the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And you would be able to follow that principle of law?
Yes.
Okay. On the ability to serve, you indicated that you're a single working person and will need to continue working to support yourself. Like I said before, this case is expected to go until we expect to be finished before Christmas Eve. Is that going to prevent you from serving on the jury?
I do work during the day, so I don't know how that's going to go.
Okay.
Could you speak into the mic? We can't hear.
Oh, I guess you have to speak up a little so counsel can hear you.
I work during the day, so if this is going to be going on during the day, I'd have to get off from work.
Okay. Are you able to get off work for this trial if you were chosen?
Possibly. I'd have to talk with work, yeah.
Okay. And you're not self-employed, correct?
No, I'm not.
All right. You haven't talked to your employer about getting off?
I've let them know that I was summoned for jury duty, but I don't know the outcome yet.
Okay. Well, they were supposed to let you off work for jury duty. Okay. So, do you think that's going to be a problem? Or don't you know at this point?
I don't know, but I mean, I think chances are good that I will be able to get off.
Okay. Now, you indicated I haven't seen very many dead people in response to the question if you have to look at photographs, graphic photographs, including photos and video of a person who has died. If you're chosen as a juror, I know nobody really likes to see that type of stuff, but would you be able to if you were chosen?
Yes.
Okay. In response to the question, do you want to serve as a juror? You said you're not sure. Okay. This will be something new for you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that I've talked to jurors after they've served, and I can tell you without exception, every single juror that I've talked to has told me that they found the experience to be rewarding, that they learned a lot, and that they stepped away from the experience with a renewed respect for our justice system. So I'm trying to tell you that I think you're going to like it. All right. I know it's difficult, it's inconvenient, and you're coming downtown and it takes you away from your normal activities, but are you willing to serve if you're chosen?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gray or Mr. Ng?
Good afternoon, number 11. We have to go by numbers. Can you think of anything that you should put in the questionnaire that you didn't think of when you answered the questions a couple months ago? Is there anything we should know about?
Not that I know of. No.
Okay. And besides the questionnaire, is there anything we should know about your personal life or back life that would be helpful in us determining whether or not you can be a fair and impartial juror on a case such as this? No?
So no.
All right. I'm going to ask a couple questions about your answers in the questionnaire, and then I'll sit down. But before I do that, you understand that because this is a criminal case, the state has the burden of proof. And because they have the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, they get to go first. Are you the type of person that will wait until you hear our case before you come to any conclusions? And can you do that?
Yes.
All right. Some of these questions seem simple to some people, but they have to be asked because once in a while they say, no, I'll decide it when the state rests their case. And that wouldn't be fair to Ms. Potter, obviously, would it?
Right.
Now, on question 10, page 5, you were asking, I couldn't hear, and maybe Her Honor asked you this, I couldn't hear your response. No matter what you have heard or seen about this case, and no matter what opinions you might have formed, can you put all of that aside and decide the case only on the evidence you receive in court, follow the law, and decide the case in a fair and impartial manner? And your response was, I am sure I will have to. And that really doesn't answer the question. Would you do that? It would be a yes or no in my book.
So I put that just because I am such a rule follower that I if I'm told I have to do something, then I would.
So the answer would be yes if you're a rules follower, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And you have on, with respect to the military, Lance Corporal in the Marines. But you don't tell us who that is.
It's my brother.
Okay, is your brother?
Yeah.
And how long has he been in the Marines?
I think he just finished his term. So
Pardon?
he just finished his term.
Finished his term?
Yeah.
You don't know how long that would be?
No, then no longer.
All right. Are you close to your brother, or do you see him? Or?
He lives here, so I see him, when he's available.
All right. And where does he live? Reside?
In Belle Plaine.
Belle Plaine, Minnesota?
Yep.
All right. And the same question with, under our system of justice, a defendant is presumed innocent of the criminal charges against them. Would you be able to follow this principle of law? And again, you say, if it is required of me, and it will be required of you, and you can do that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the work, if you do get off, will the employer pay you? Do you know?
I'm not sure on that part.
Can you afford to be off for a couple weeks if you don't get paid?
Not really.
Your last answer is that you're not sure if you want to serve as a juror. If you are selected, would you serve?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have. Your Honor, will pass this jury.
Okay. Counsel? Any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good afternoon, Juror 11. Thank you for your patience with us today. I have a few follow-up questions I want to ask you about. There's a question in the questionnaire about how your community has been affected by any of the demonstrations that have occurred over the last year or so. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
And do you recall what your answer was? I know you filled this out a while ago, so if you don't have perfect recollection, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't really remember what I put.
Yeah. You wrote negatively, I don't feel safe going out at night or to certain areas. You still feel that way?
Yes. Yeah. Do I need to go into why? Well, especially at work, because I work in Minneapolis. It's just been questionable, especially in that area.
Yeah. Do you think that, what did you think about the demonstrations and the protests going on while it was happening?
It was scary because I live kind of in that area as well. So it was, and I heard shots from in my house. So it was scary.
Very scary. Do you think that, do you associate those issues with any particular group or people?
I mean, you can't really tell who it was, so you can't say it was one group or another.
How do you think the city and state government responded to all that? What did you think of that?
I feel like it's a little more organized because again, at work, I did see how they handle the situation just right outside our windows, and it seemed like it was handled a little better.
It's easy to see all of that, and for you to see it firsthand, and think that there's kind of like a lawlessness going on out there. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Do you think that would affect your ability to be a juror in a case like this?
I would like to say that I'm impartial until I get the whole story, because there's always two sides to every story.
Okay. And so do you think you'd be able to leave your thoughts about that outside of the jury room, outside of the courtroom, and not bring that into how you make decisions in this case?
Yes. I do have to, just listen to what is presented here.
You paused a little, and I want to assure you that we're not judging you on your answers. Right? There's no right or wrong. It's just how you feel. That's
right.
We do this jury selection because not everybody is right for every case. Right.
Right.
So I want to make sure that your very understandable concerns about your safety and what happened in the past couple of years, you don't connect with what you would be doing here in the courtroom.
Right.
You can keep those two things separate.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
You have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Court reporter's taking everything down. So there's sort of not like what's the easiest way to say it? It's not a negative taste left in your mouth from those things that you just can't get rid of and would bring in here.
Right.
There was a question about Ms. Potter and the Brooklyn Center Police Department, and you wrote, "I respect the police and the law." Of course, nothing wrong with that. And it's in the question about anything about Ms. Potter and the Brooklyn Center Police Department that would make it difficult to be fair. And so you wrote, "I respect the police and the law." Can you just describe for us why you wrote that answer there?
I believe that the police do keep order. It does vary upon cases again, but there are mistakes sometimes, or things happen. But I do believe that police are there to keep order.
And they often do, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible that you can have respect for police and the law and still be a juror and hear evidence about a police officer's conduct out in the field?
Yes.
Do you think, as we talk about the defendant having a right to a fair trial, right? The state's a party to this case too, right?
Right.
The state should have a right to a fair trial as well, right?
Right.
So when we ask, can you be a fair and impartial juror, we really mean, can you be a fair and impartial juror for both sides?
Yes.
You think you can do that?
Yes.
I think the judge asked you earlier, if a police officer testifies, would you automatically believe them without regard, would you automatically believe them because they're a police officer? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And, I think you part of the group that said no to that. Do you think you can, respect the police and the law and still evaluate an officer's testimony like anybody else's?
Yes.
Having respect for the law, as I said, is good. Right? We like that. And part of the law is basing a decision only on what you hear in court. You can do that, right?
Yes.
And so you also answered there is that sort of like chart of questions and choices. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Agree and not agree. Kind
Yes.
of thing. And it's a quiz, right? It was a lot to do. And there's a question about whether people give our law enforcement officers the respect they deserve. And you checked that you somewhat agree.
I think sometimes people, based on their experience, already have a bias too, and so then they just, either respect or don't respect. So I feel like people are biased sometimes, and that's why I answered it that way.
Okay. And that kind of ties in with, I think, a question I probably already asked you like a few minutes ago, right? Is, do you feel as a person you can feel that that officers maybe should get more respect than they do in general, but still evaluate fairly and with an open mind, the conduct of a police officer in a case like this?
So is this a yes or no answer?
I won't hold you to it. You can just, if you don't understand the question, I will try to rephrase it. But otherwise, you can answer it however you want.
Okay, can you rephrase it?
I can try, yeah. You may have this feeling that sometimes police officers maybe deserve more respect than they get. Is that a fair way to summarize?
I think everybody does deserve respect. Maybe not one person more than another, but because they are officers of the law, they should get some respect. Because how else would the law be, I guess, like how would everybody abide by the law if nobody respected police?
And but you think that sort of a general proposition,
Right.
you are willing to keep an open mind about whether any individual police officer acted properly.
Yes.
And do you think it's fair to, to consider whether an officer has acted properly, you as a person?
Yes.
Any individual officer, for instance.
Right.
Okay. You had the question about, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second-guess decisions they make while on duty. And you said you somewhat agree with that. Do you remember?
Yes. I think sometimes you just react, and sometimes it might be a wrong reaction, but mistakes happen. People make mistakes.
And sometimes mistakes are bigger than other mistakes.
Right.
Sometimes mistakes are actually errors.
Right.
Yeah, I object to this. It's improper way here. Going into evidence in this case.
I'm going to do a sidebar, please.
Okay, sorry about that. There's a couple of words I want to ask you about that are tied into these questions and answers, and I did that inartfully. I apologize. The question that we're talking about here is it uses the term second guessing, and you answered that you somewhat agree. What did you think the word second guessing meant when you answered the question?
I mean, I sometimes second guess myself, so I'm sure that with everybody's, when it comes down to a split second decision, you could make that, you have that split second thought, and then you just do with what decision you make at that moment.
Okay. And you use the term mistake, and that's what I was trying to ask you about. But let me ask you this way. In this case, with any jury, the judge gives instructions on what the law is. The judge defines the crimes alleged for you. And as a juror, and as a rule follower, you would follow the law that the judge gives you, correct?
Right.
And would you be willing and able to decide the facts of the case as a juror based solely on the judge's law and the facts you hear in the courtroom?
Yes.
And these very understandable notions that you have about mistakes and second guessing, would you be able to leave that out of your deliberations as you're working as a juror in this case?
I object to that. She has a right to her own personal opinion, and she.
Excuse me.
I object to the point.
No time objections, please. Okay, why don't you ask a different question, Mr. Frank?
So the bottom line, I guess, what we're getting at here, right, is when you serve as a juror, can you fairly apply the law the judge gives you and only the evidence you hear in this courtroom to arrive at a decision one way or another?
Yes.
Bear with me, I just gotta check my notes real quickly. Excuse me just a second. Thank you, Juror 11, for your patience with me. Thank you, Your Honor. We'll pass the juror.
Okay. Well, juror number 11, you will be on this jury. So we expect to start on December 8th, but you will receive a phone call telling you where to report, what time, and where. Okay? So you have a great evening. All right. Good night. Deputy, before you bring the next juror in, can you give me one moment? Okay. Okay, counsel, would you please take a look at juror number 14, particularly his answers on the ability to serve? Part 4, he's going to be going to university during that time, okay? And he'll be unable to attend his classes. And so I'm just wondering whether or not the parties want to agree that he can be stricken, or you want to question him. He also, please take a look at his answer to number 7 as well. Okay, Mr. Frank? His answer to number 7 is concerning as well.
No.
Sure. I mean, I could ask him some follow-up questions on that. Okay, we're ready for juror number 14. Okay, hello, number 14. Please take a seat. And you may remove your mask, okay? Just have a couple questions for you. You responded to the questions about ability to serve, and in response to the questions relating to the time span that this is going to take, you said there was a significant hardship or reason why you couldn't, because you'll be going to university during this time. Okay, when do you start school?
I've already started.
Okay, and are you going to school full time?
Yeah.
Okay, so you go during the day?
Yeah.
Okay, what grade are you in?
I'm a sophomore.
Okay, and so you would be unable to attend your classes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I just had another question. Under our system of justice, the jury must decide the case solely on the evidence produced in court and the law the judge instructs, and not because of bias, passion, prejudice, or sympathy. And the question is, would you be able to follow this principle? And you said, no, I believe my biases would likely play a role as well as sympathy. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I believe my my political leanings, along with the political leanings of my family, would affect the and would make me me biased, I guess.
Okay. Would either party like to ask questions of juror number 14?
Just one quick question. So I assume you have finals coming?
Yeah. Yes.
Coming up, would that be during this time then that you'd be doing finals?
Yes.
So this would really just kind of obliterate a whole semester for you.
Yes.
Agreed. Okay. All right. Well, good luck with your finals and good luck with school. You're excused from this jury.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Hello, number 15.
Hello?
Okay. Thank you for filling out this questionnaire. Will you please remove your mask? Okay, couple of follow-up questions, all right? You stated that you have a somewhat negative and general impression of defendant Kimberly Potter, that her actions seem careless and without regard for the possible fatal consequences. And that I guess what I need to know from you is whether or not you can listen to the evidence in this case and decide the case solely based on the evidence and not on some general impression you might have formed.
Yes, I do believe I can.
Okay. You said yes, absolutely, so that's a great answer. Okay, and you also indicated that you might not be able to render a fair and impartial verdict if Kimberly Potter had a history, a substantial history of abusive behaviors that violated standard practice. Again, if there was no evidence of that type that was admitted into trial, could you render a verdict based upon that?
Yes, I could.
Okay, so even if you heard that she did and it was not in evidence, you could base your decision on the evidence alone?
Yes.
Okay. Your maternal aunt and your uncle are both lawyers.
That's correct.
What type of lawyers are they?
My mother's sister practices family law, and her husband practices corporate law of some kind.
Okay, and neither has ever done any criminal law, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and your paternal cousin is a law student, and does he or she intend? Does he intend on doing criminal law?
I don't know that he's gotten that far yet.
Okay, got to graduate first before that, huh? Okay, it looks like you spent a month volunteering for A.G. Keith Ellison's campaign. When did that happen?
That's correct. That would have been August of 2018.
Okay. Now, as you know, Mr. A.G. Ellison is representing the state in this case. Are you going to be able to overlook the fact that you volunteered for his campaign would indicate that you were in support of him for AG, correct?
Mixed.
Oh, can you explain that, please?
Sure. I was connected to Mr. Ellison's campaign through a connection I made while I was working in Europe. And I thought it would be a really good political opportunity to understand local politics at home. I was on the campaign for about a month, did not make any close connections, headed back to school in the fall.
Okay.
No offense, Mr. Ellison, it wasn't particularly about your candidacy.
Okay. So, am I understanding that the fact that you volunteered for his campaign, is that going to affect the way you look at the state's case?
Not at all.
Okay, so you wouldn't give the state's case more credibility just because Mr. Ellison is prosecuting this case, is that right? Okay, you're positive about that?
Absolutely positive.
Okay. I like your answer to the question about not listening to news accounts and not posting anything. Slightly tough to avoid social media coverage, but getting off Twitter for a bit would be good for you. Okay. So you could do that, couldn't you? Stay off social media?
Yes, completely.
And keep away from reading any news reports or podcasts about this case. Okay.
Yes.
So you want to be on this jury?
Sorry?
You want to be on this jury?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And you're willing to serve?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ng?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Paul Lang. I'm with Earl Grey, Amanda Montgomery. We represent Officer Potter. And the part of the process is that I got to ask you questions as well, followed by my colleagues on the state. So, the last page of your questionnaire talks about accountability. Do you remember the answer to that question?
No.
I'll read it to you. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
Thank you.
The question is, do you want to serve on the jury for this case? You said yes, and then you have two paragraphs. The second one I want to ask you about, I believe, you quote, I believe accountability, fair accountability is important for a just and healthy society. It'd be an honor to participate. I believe in civil service so much that it's probably on my career path. My question is, fair accountability, what do you mean by that?
Accountability as rendered by the fair rule of law.
Well, one of the ways to look at fair accountability as a phrase would be to hold Officer Potter into account and to hold her responsible for what you believe she did. Is that what you were referring to on fair accountability by chance?
Not necessarily.
It's not. Tell me. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Not necessarily. It'd be more in reference to understanding the forces at work in regard to that situation. One of them being Officer Potter, but obviously not all of them. And understanding as a society and collective what led to that scenario.
Well, you understand that the task is a little simpler than that. It's really just to see if, presuming her innocent, which you can do, whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Of the crimes charged. That's your task, essentially. Yes. And so the sociology of all of this is of great interest to you and to the rest of us, but it really is not why we're here.
Of course.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But nonetheless, there is a context to the case, and you've written quite a bit about it in here. Right?
Yes,
okay.
I think so.
All right. So I want to ask you a couple questions about what you've written. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. The first question is on the fourth page, and Judge Chu did refer you to this. You quote, or you checkmark the somewhat negative box, and you say her actions seem careless and without regard for possible fatal consequences, but not intentionally malicious.
That's correct.
Can you help me with what you were saying there? I think I kind of know what you're saying, but can you interpret it for me?
I would say, as I wrote, that the actions did seem careless based on what I recall from the case, from just the media coverage. They also did not seem intentional to me. There did not seem to be an intent to permanently injure or kill Mr. Wright.
Okay. Did it seem to be sort of like an accident to you? Is that how you looked at the video?
I felt it could have been an accident, yes.
Okay.
Counsel. Sideline, please.
Quite the system.
It doesn't always work. All right, we may continue, Mr. Ng.
And then the next question was number 3. You had a neutral impression of Mr. Wright.
That'd be correct,
Do you
yeah.
maintain that today?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you was neutral because you didn't know too much about him. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. The question I want to ask you about is number 5, though. You expressed to your family and friends how absurd and terrible this incident was, especially following the death of George Floyd. Can you explain your answer to me in terms of the absurdity of the situation?
I felt, and still feel, that Officer Potter's actions were careless, or could have been quite careless, and that I felt it, at least I was more on edge about police behavior and my own behavior in regards to the conversation we were having as a culture, and it felt unfortunate and somewhat careless that the actions occurred.
Well, would you agree that she's, and I think the court has asked you this, that she's presumed innocent?
Yes, of course.
Of the allegation? You would agree with that and embrace the concept?
Yes.
Is the concept of a presumption of innocence consistent or inconsistent with your thought that the incident was absurd?
Consistent.
How so?
I felt that my perception at the time of the incident made the incident feel absurd. However, I'm open to that being changed, very much so. And in the context of a trial, I am absolutely unwilling to function with the presumption of innocent until proven guilty.
And you also engaged in the protests, or at least you visited the George Floyd site at 38th in Chicago, it indicates here, am I right?
That's correct. I visited once closer to the events of George Floyd's murder, and I visited later when a friend came into town. My protest activity, I went once to the protest on Lake Street. It was probably a weekend morning after things had kind of hit the fan for the first night, and I went with my mother and sister to help whatever the cleanup was, and then stayed for some of the protest after.
How many protests have you been to?
Just the one.
And you talk about the racial disparities in law enforcement as well?
Yes.
Okay. The question in this case is whether you would be biased in listening to the evidence that Officer Potter's white.
No, I don't think I would be.
Mr. Wright is black.
Correct.
And does that racial composition of the case, a disparity for you, would that impact on how you would look at the case? And I'm not being insulting to ask you about that, but given your answers here, I wanted to ask you. Okay?
Sure. I mean, one of my degrees is in public health, and so I have a pretty good understanding, I like to think, of how racial disparity and systemic racism function as both on a structural level and then how it filters down to a personal level. However, in the context of this case, this is an individual case rather than a systemic or disparity-related event. And so I think for an individual case, that doesn't really apply.
And keep going through here, so I appreciate your patience with me. One of the questions at page 7, which is with the multiple choice questions here, where you had to say strongly agree, disagree, etc. You said, do you somewhat agree to the question, I support defunding the police?
I do, yes.
Could you explain that for us?
I've done some work on government budgets, municipal and federal, and it is my personal opinion that police are overfunded relative to the amount of good they can do in a community as compared to other initiatives that could be more deserving of that funding.
Would that lead you to have a slight bias against police officers then, those who choose that as a career?
Not particularly. You
just think there's too much fat in the budget?
Yeah.
If I may use that simplistic way of talking about it. You don't question someone's decision to be a police officer, do you?
I'd question it like any other career choice.
Pardon me?
I would question it like any other career choice.
What do you mean by that?
If one of my friends wanted to become a police officer, I would ask them why and whether they felt that that was congruent with their values, as I would if they wanted to become a lawyer or a veterinarian.
Would you try to talk them out of it?
Probably not.
You mentioned the Japanese system. I was curious what that was.
A firearm control?
Yeah.
The Japanese have a well thought out and large federal apparatus, well, not federal, national apparatus for regulating how guns are available and used in their societies.
Far more than ours.
Far more.
Okay. And that's the direction you'd like to take us?
Yes.
If you could.
If I could.
Okay. There's a question about Blue Lives Matter on page 9. And you say, quote, it's not about police, it's about white supremacy. Tell us about that answer.
Sure. My current line of work means I do a lot of research into disinformation and the communities that generate it. And one of the things that I've seen on the side of the radical right is that Blue Lives Matter is used as a calling card, as it would, for white supremacy.
And then for Black Lives Matter, you indicate the organization, at least in your view, is unstable. Is that right?
Yes.
Why do you say unstable?
They've had lots of leadership changes in the past 2-3 years.
You were in Los Angeles for a while. Was that for college?
Correct.
Which college you go to?
I went to USC.
And you believe that the justice system is flawed, do you not?
Yes.
And what do you think we should do to fix it?
If I were eligible and I could answer that question, I would be President of the United States.
Do you have a thought of what we can do to fix it?
Many.
And knowing that it's a flawed system, undefined, you're still willing to be a juror in this case?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Engage in the central tenet of democracy, which is the jury trial.
Yes.
A couple more questions. This connection to Mr. Ellison, of course, he's here in the courtroom. You recognized him.
Yes, I do.
You smiled at him when you came in, I assume, right? Because you recognized him?
I assume he doesn't recognize me. I met him very briefly once.
Our concern, of course, is that we're going against his office. They represent the state.
Yes.
And we were wondering if you had any bias for or against him because he's on the other side of this case.
Not at all.
May I confirm?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for answering my question. The defense exercises its first peremptory challenge.
All right.
Juror number 15. You're excused from this jury, but thank you so much for answering our questions. You're done with jury duty. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you all.
All right, counsel, what I'd like you to do is take a look at juror number 18, overnight. Take a look at her questionnaire. She's got some significant anxiety issues. Juror 19, she's got some child care issues. Juror number 30, it looks like she's pregnant and vomiting. Can you write these down so you can take a look at
Your Honor,
this?
can I stop you for just 1 second? Did you mention 18? I thought 18 was a postponement. Is that right?
18 is a postponement now. Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to get counsel to take a look at some of these questionnaires more closely so that we can discuss maybe agreeing to a for-cause strike so we don't have to question them. So take a look at 19. There's some child care issues. I just made some quick notes when I was looking through this. Number 30 is pregnant and vomiting. Number 31, wife has cancer. He has high blood pressure, and I think he indicated some physical problems. Number 38, husband's best friend is friends with Officer Potter. 43 is a Minneapolis police officer. Okay, those are the ones that kind of stuck out to me, but if you could take a look at those questionnaires and then maybe we can discuss whether or not we need to question them. Okay?
We submitted our strikes and I filed and they didn't agree to.
Right. But will you take another look at those questionnaires, because we can always review them, and if you decide that we can strike them for cause, it'll save time. That's what I'm concerned about. All right, counsel, is there anything we need to put on the record before we conclude? All right. Okay, counsel, I will see you tomorrow. Please try to get here early. You were on time today, just so that we don't keep the jury waiting. If any legal issues come up in the meantime, please email each other, and I'm always here at 8. So, okay? Have a great night. Thanks, counsel.